Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, we've got a double header for you. Two guests in one show. First of all, Robbie Hulett. He's the owner of Tower Maintenance Corporation. Robbie does a great job on social media keeping you and me updated on what's going on in the tower world. Secondly, an interview with Bud Walters. Bud is a local Nashville station owner. He's got stations in several markets, and he's talking to me about the proposed regulatory relief changes from the NAB being proposed to the FCC. All that's coming up next on TWiRT. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics with the Bionics Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By Air, featuring Playout One radio automation software, comprehensive streaming solutions, website content management, and social media tools for maximum listener engagement on the web at AIIR.com. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. Delighted that you're here. And we've got a little bit different situation with this live show as we do it live. If you're watching the show live, you're seeing the sausage getting made. If you're watching the produced version of the show, well, you're in luck. You're going to see the whole show. Everything's going to be in it. But for this live show, we're going to take advantage of our guest while he is available for a short period of time to talk to. And that means we're going to add in the commercial messages later. So how about that? I know I'm giving away the secrets here. I'm Kirk Harnack. It's This Week in Radio Tech. It's our 745th episode with Robbie Hulett. We're calling this episode, What Goes Up Must Be Maintained. I'm Kirk Harnack in the Nashville studio in the TELUS Alliance studio here in Nashville, Tennessee. I understand that apparently my computer's decided to start giving you a sync issue between voice and video, and I'm sorry about that. It worked fine, when we first connected, so I don't know what has changed. We'll try to look at that and see if we can improve it for the next week's show. But anyway, let's bring in our guest and introduce him to you right now. It's Robbie Hulett. He owns a tower company, Tower Maintenance Company. Hey, Robbie, good to see you.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here.
Looks like you're on the road. You're always on the road, man.
Yeah, can't ever stop, man. You got to pay the bills,
Tell me about your company, Tower Maintenance Company. You do have a big social media presence. What do you guys do? What do you like to do? What are you good at?
Well, I started a little over 20 years ago. I used to work in radio and radio ministry and used to preach on the radio. And I'm pretty familiar with inside the studios of a radio station. And he needed some light bulbs changed on his tower one day. And I walked in to turn in my cassette tape back then. And he wanted some light bulbs changed. I said, how hard could it be? I'll do that for you. And so we went out to his tower. I changed his light bulbs and fell in love with the industry and went and worked for a guy for a few years and then started my own company. And we started out just painting towers and changing light bulbs, but we slowly moved up to sort of all of it, changing the guy wires and building towers and demolitioning towers, hanging FM antennas and building AM stations. And so kind of just evolved into a turnkey company over the years.
Wow. Well, I'm looking forward to chatting with you for the next few minutes here. You as our guest, and I do appreciate you taking the time to connect us, contact us while you're on the road here. Let's see. Tell you what. Usually at this point in the show, we take a quick break for our sponsor, Air, AIIR.com. We're going to do that right now. We'll be right back after this word with Ricky Lee. Hey, it's Kirk Harnack, and I'm here with Ricky Lee, the CEO of Air. Ricky, you guys make a fantastic automation system, but streaming is a really big deal. Tell me about streaming with Air.
It really is. We've got a beautiful streaming platform with an incredible dashboard with fantastic analytics. And you can buy it for just $20 a month, all you can eat. No limits on bandwidth or bit rates. And you can also record shows as well. So if you like to deliver on-demand content for $20 a month, you can stream and deliver that on-demand content to an RSS feed that can feed your radio player, your mobile apps, or a podcast that people can download and enjoy.
Now, $20 a month, that must be for just some slow MP3, right?
No, MP3, AAC, and we also now support HLS, which is big in the industry right now.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. How do I start to explore or find out more about streaming through Air?
You go to air.com, AIIR.com/streaming. And from there, with a credit card, you can sign up and get started.
Thanks a lot to Air, AIIR.com, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. I hope you'll take advantage of the things that they make for the radio business. We certainly do at our 21 radio stations using their Playout One automation system. It just keeps getting better and better all the time. I'm Kirk Harnack in the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee, and we have a guest with us. Our guest is Robbie Hulett with TWiRT Maintenance Company, and Robbie is the owner of the company. He's been doing this for 20 plus years, and Robbie started out painting towers. I've climbed a few towers, changed a few light bulbs, but I've figured out, this is just not the profession that I want to get into. Robbie, what made it change in your heart and in your mind, and you said, this is the profession I want to do? What happened to make that occur in your mind?
Well, I've always been adventurous. I've never liked sitting still. I never could work an office job. I've had multiple jobs where you were inside working a factory, things of this nature. But I just grew up very young inside the logging wood. Never was my thing to work inside. I wanted to be outside logging, construction, things of that nature. So whenever I discovered towers, just going around from tower to tower all over the United States and climbing up, seeing everything you could see, bird's eye view. There's so much you can see from the tower. So that was always so exciting to me, is just drive all over the country and grab a hold of a tower and climb it and go do some work on it. And you see anything you want to see. You get to see the turkey, you get to see deer. You get to see kids swimming in the pool in the backyard. You see car wrecks. I mean, I've seen about everything from the top of the tower over the years. So I don't know, it just kind of connected with my soul, my personality of who I am. And, next thing I know, I blink and it's been over 20 years.
In the little bit of tower climbing I've done, there's a certain kind of stress involved, but there's also I find a huge relief being on a tower, knowing that, hey, if my phone rings, I'm not obligated to answer it. I'm on a tower. You're kind of one purpose. You're of the mind of one purpose to get something done, whatever it may have been or may be. But there's a certain peacefulness being up on a tower. Would you agree?
Absolutely. That's a good time to talk to God and have some heart-to-heart moments with yourself. I've seen some pretty good sunsets, sunrises, and you're definitely at one with nature in the world up there.
Robbie, one thing we're going to do here, since our show is fairly visual, we've got some photos that are from your gallery that you make available to the public, and maybe there's a little bit of a story probably with most every one of these photos, or at least an explanation of what's going on. And I want to remind our audience that Robbie's company, TWiRT Maintenance Company, has a presence on Facebook that is really good. Robbie posts video and photos of various projects that he's doing, and he always adds a personal note of what's going on in the photo and does a little explanation too. And I appreciate this. It really gets me some insight into the tower business and what they do. But Suncast, if you want to go ahead and pop a photo up, we'll let Robbie not take his eyes off the road for too long, but tell us what's going on here. Look at this tower, Robbie.
Yeah, I'm not going to call out the tall letters or what company it is, but that's sure. That's a self-supporting tower. It's called a T-bar. It's got a T-bar across the top, so you can mount two antennas up there at the same time. You can have two different TV stations operating from the same tower. And so we was called in 2011 to paint the tower, but it was right up over a VA hospital, right over a big college soccer field, right over a huge parking lot in the city. And it was a pretty high-risk job, because when you're painting it, you got to be careful with your paint drops and all, and not paint the whole city up underneath the tower. So they had called us to repaint the tower and paint the T-bar, and that was 2011 that we done that job. It was a pretty good time, and it was a fun project. And you paint these towers because of aviation marking. So when airplanes are flying through the sky, they need to see distinct colors, a separation of colors for visibility. So it's created for high visibility for aircraft as you're flying along. You see the tower out in front of you being orange and white, and then the FAA and the FCC requires you to stay inside of a certain color coding through the years as the sun fades the paint and the orange turns more pink. Then they'll call us to come back and paint the tower again because they need it bright and shiny so the aviation aircraft flying through the city or wherever the tower is don't hit the tower. So it's called aviation marking is the technical term. You're marking. You ain't really painting the tower. You're marking the tower with aviation orange and white for aircraft.
Wow. And by the way, if you could tell us, what is the number one technique to prevent paint spatter from getting on valuable things on the ground around you that don't need to be painted?
The biggest part would be just being slow and careful, being methodical. I mean, we've all been in a hurry and got outside and washed our truck in a hurry and we missed a few spots, right? But if you get out there on a Sunday afternoon and you take your time and you're in no hurry and you really work at being slow and careful and methodical, then you usually end up with a pretty clean vehicle. And so it's the same way for paint towers. You just want to be very careful and take your time.
Gotcha. So it sounds like it takes more time to paint a tower when you've got to avoid the paint spatter. If you get paint a tower out in the middle of a bean field in the middle of Mississippi, you can probably be a little faster on it because the paint spatter doesn't matter so much. Wow. Let's take a look at our next picture, Suncast. Oh my goodness, that looks like a helicopter. What's going on here?
Yeah, so that was a company that I helped on this project. It's a helicopter taking a TV antenna off the top of the tower. There was a thing called the reef pack back a few years ago that lasted for about 4 years, and it was the FCC selling off a certain amount of channels of the TV network, the TV bands and channels. They sold off a certain portion, so a majority of the TV stations around the country had to get a new antenna and get their antenna repacked with a new channel.
When stations had to change their antenna, did they oftentimes also have to change their coax or waveguide?
It just depended on the age of the antenna, the age of their hard line, the age of their coax, just what kind of deal they negotiated with the government of what they needed to change out and replace.
On that helicopter, it looks like there is, I think you might call it a cupola, or there's a seating position with a rounded window on the back of the cockpit that looks toward the crane assembly. Am I visualizing that correctly?
Yeah, it's a viewer window. So there's one of the alternate pilots in there is looking straight down at the antenna and the rigging. So when he gets ready to lift the antenna off the top of the tower, he can look down through that window and get very precise. So when the primary pilot, he'll hand over to the secondary pilot, say, okay, you're control off of the antenna, and this guy's actually helping the riggers on the tower with the antenna hook everything up, and we're talking with the helicopter pilots, and we're being very methodical about when the bolts are loose. Okay, the antenna's clear. Okay, you can lift up and take the antenna away, type of thing.
I always wondered how they did that. Now that makes good sense. Suncast, let's move on to the next picture. Oh, okay. We have a gin pole here, right? What's going on?
Yep. So that's a gin pole. It's taking a new antenna to the top of the tower. And the reason why, so that gin pole, it can take a week to move in there and set all that up and get all the rigging ready. And then a few more days to take it all down, load up, and get to the helicopter, which was the previous picture. You can have a helicopter come in there, grab the antenna, take the old one down, pull the new one up, and you're just ready to go in a few days. And so because the repack was so busy, one job after another for all these stations across the country, the helicopter helps speed everything up. But the gin pole is basically just a device that sets up above the tower and gives you a cabling system that you can hook up to the antenna, lift the antenna up, and lower it to the ground.
Oh, I know what this is. I've got one of these on the floor behind me here in the studio.
Yep, it's sitting right behind you. So the FAA requires the towers to stay lit. So when aircraft fly through at nighttime, you've got a flashing beacon. So this is an L864 TWiRT beacon. And the lens is red, but the bulb inside of it is just your standard white light bulb with a filament. And so it's just like a tail light or a light bulb in your car. It's got a socket in it. You push it down, turn it, and pull it out. Got little tabs on it to lock it into place. So you just spin a wing nut in the middle of the beacon, and it's got that hinge on the back side. Fold it over, open it up, pull those two bulbs out, put new ones in, and then close it back up, and you're good to go. So once your light bulbs go out, as engineers know, they have to file a NOTAM with the FAA saying, hey, our light bulbs are out. We've called somebody, and they got 30 days to get their light bulbs fixed.
Hey, Suncast, if you'd bring the camera back on me, put me on full screen. I always point to this light bulb here from the top of the tower, and this fixture that I've got here came from a tower in Lula, Georgia. My friend Charles Kinney, who's been a guest on the show, it was a tower that he was in charge of, and they switched over to a strobe system on that tower. And so anyway, he asked me if I wanted a beacon. I said, sure, I'll come down there and meet you. And it may have, I don't know if it was for sure, but it may have been, Robbie, it may have been one of your crews that swapped that out. I did meet a crew there that day that I showed up. And also flew my drone around the tower. So it was a good day, but you're familiar with that tower at Lula, Georgia.
I don't think they make those beacons anymore either. I think they're out of production. So you got a piece of history there.
I believe you're right. Suncast, let's see another picture here. Oh, what's that?
So that's the monopole that we're taking down. It was a really tight spot. So we had a crane come in there between two buildings and reach out with this boom over between the two buildings and take down a monopole that wasn't in use anymore.
Okay. All right. So tight work there. Got to be careful. All right. Next picture.
The monopoles are basically a tower where you don't have a lot of real estate. So a guide tower,
Yeah.
you got all your guy wires holding the tower up. A stealth supporter, you'll have a wide base at the bottom. The monopoles in the city, you can kind of just pick anywhere, and you can have a really small piece of land, put your monopole up, put your antennas on it, you're good to go, and you don't take up a bunch of real estate. This is a self-supporting tower we're building in Virginia, and it's up on top of a mountain right in the middle of an apple orchard. So we had to be very, very careful not to touch none of their apple trees. And there were some tourists and customers coming through there all the time picking apples. You pay so much to pick your own apples. So we were warned to be very cautious about not damaging any apple trees. But yeah, we built that tower from the ground up and put a new TV antenna on the top of it. Yeah, that's the antenna that's going on top of it. That's a TV antenna, and I'm not going to be very specific with names and manufacturers and stuff like that. That's a
pretty tower.
1,000-foot self-supporter in Ohio, and they asked us to come in there and repaint it. And that's one of the completion photos. We've still got a rope up on the tower, lowering a few things down off of it, getting it ready to be done and get out of there. But that's one of my proudest moments. That was a monster. You could park at least 10 or 12 full-size vehicles underneath the bottom of that tower. It was a really, really large project.
Okay. I don't know if I've ever seen a 1,000-foot self-supporter. That's pretty cool. And what was that last picture there, Suncast, that you had on?
That's the same tower. I just took a picture of me under it.
Gotcha. And how about one more picture, Suncast? What else we got? Oh, it's like an AM array.
That's AM's almost out of here. I know we're talking to a broadcast audience. No, so sad. It's one of my favorite field, called the ground radio triple connection, just the science and physics of AM, how it works. But this is I think I can't see the whole picture, but I think there's a 4-tower array in there that just shows 2 of the towers. But
yeah, actually,
it might be a direct.
I think we got several pictures in a row here of some AM. Suncast, if you want to go ahead and show us the next one, and there's 3 of the towers.
Yeah, so that's called a directional AM. So you have all your towers in a row, and they're all broadcasting RF in a certain direction towards a certain town to saturate that area and that community that they want to penetrate. And so they put all the towers in a row on a certain set of coordinates, and it's just called a directional AM. And just like you point an antenna on a tower, like it's an FM, you point it in a certain direction to saturate the community that you want to saturate with signal. It's the same with AM. They put the towers in a row like that to send the signal towards a certain community, city, or certain population that they want to be able to cover. And a quick notation on AM, the tower is the antenna. The tower is hot. If you touch it, it will burn you. On an FM tower or any normal guide tower that's not AM, the tower is just a structure to mount the antenna to above the tree. You get trees and build it tall enough that the signal from the antenna can go out across the community unobstructed. So with AM, same different. It's just that the tower is the AM, and there's been many thieves and vandals go in there trying to rob the copper tubing and things, the feed tube off of an AM. They go in there trying to rob and steal stuff, and they get burned up pretty bad. So just a quick notation, any of you that's not too familiar, you get up around an AM site, I would suggest not touching the tower.
That's the truth, indeed. We've got a couple more pictures here before we're going to take our next break. Suncast is buzz on to the next here, see what we got. Oh, that's the base of one of these AM towers. Wow, that's what we were seeing there for a second. Suncast, that was a tower, a self-supporter, where all four legs were insulated. Look at that.
Yeah, all the legs are insulated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, every AM is going to have an insulator. If it's a guide tower, it'll have a single insulator on the base of the tower. Or if it's a self-supporter, each leg will be insulated because the tower can't touch anything on the ground. It'll short-circuit the system in the way it feeds and radiates.
Yep, indeed. That's what we call series fed. It's possible to feed an AM and have the tower grounded with a folded unipole, but man, you don't see many of these self-supporters that have each leg insulated. I've worked at a station in Jackson, Tennessee that had that, but that tower was brought down by a tornado, probably a good 15 years ago, or maybe more. But wow, that's really something. Suncast, what else we got here, real quick, before we take our break? Oh, there's a nice aerial shot.
Yeah, that's the same thing. It's just a directional AM. That's in Indiana. We done a paint job there, painting them up. And actually, I was on the tower next to it. That's their TV tower. That's 1,000 feet. I had to go up there and change the bulbs while I was on the project. So while I was climbing up on that tower, I just took pictures of the towers down below.
Good deal. Good deal. So tell you what, we're with Robbie Hulett. Robbie is the owner of Tower Maintenance Company. They've got a great social media presence. If you want to follow Robbie or his tower company on Facebook or wherever he is on social media, but I follow him on Facebook. It's interesting to see when Robbie has to go demolition a tower. Of course, it's kind of sad. It pulls at your heartstrings, but sometimes that's what has to be done. Yeah. Robbie, we're going to take a quick break and be right back with a final segment and a couple more pictures. Right after this, we're going to hear from our friends at Broadcast Bionics about Camera One.
Camera One from Broadcast Bionics. Designed to bring video to your audio content. Visualizing radio and podcasts for social media. Camera One can automatically create, capture and brand professionally switched video for live streaming or upload, making your production shareable. Control and configure using a web browser on any device. Camera One is available as a 4-camera or 8-camera system using the Blackmagic A10 Mini range, including the A10 Mini Extreme. You can use cameras to suit your studio and your budget. You'll need one camera for a studio wide shot and usually one camera per microphone. A standard multi-channel sound card or IP driver monitors audio from each studio microphone, and we work natively with Axia systems. Ideally, this will be a post-fader feed from each mic, although you can use pre-fade audio or a mic split if that's all you have available. These audio levels are used to intelligently switch the video feed when each contributor is talking. You can also group microphones together into one shot and use the audio from a mixer's aux bus. You can use Camera One's auto switch feature, or disable it and switch using the on-screen buttons or the buttons on the A10. Recordings can automatically start when you tell the system you're on the air. This on-air indication can be linked to your studio's red lights via IP or an Avantec Adam GPIO interface. You can quickly browse all the videos that have been automatically created during your broadcast, download them and post. Camera One is a user-installable system. You'll need a good spec Windows 10 PC, i7 with plenty of storage and 16 gig of RAM. It's better if this machine isn't used for anything else. Remember, you can control the software in a web browser on another device on your network. Camera One, a thrifty way of creating scroll-stopping video from your show or podcast from Broadcast Bionics.
Thanks so much to Broadcast Bionics, Dan McQuillan. By the way, Dan's going to be a guest later on this summer. He's got some great uses for Chat GPT that engineers like you and I really going to appreciate. Make our jobs better. Dan has got a lot of this stuff figured out. Thanks again to Broadcast Bionics for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Hey, it's Kirk Harnack, and my guest is Robbie Hulett. I've actually been talking to Robbie for some time about coming on the show and being a guest, and he's a busy man between running a tower company and learning to fly. He's not got much time. He's joining us from his truck. Robbie, tell me for just a minute about learning to fly. What has that been like for you?
It's way more complex than I thought it was. For all of us on the ground, when you look up and see a plane flying around, you're like, oh, that ain't that hard. That ain't that bad. Like, it's just, you just float around the sky. It's not a big deal. But getting up there and maintaining altitude and staying on a certain heading and talking to the airports that you're coming into, like with every airport, you got to call in the AWOS, which is the round the clock weather that gives you the wind speeds and clouds and the visibility and all these kinds of things, your altimeter setting. And you got to call in before every landing, every airport, and get your heading and what runway you're going to land on and what your wind's doing. And just jumping around on frequencies, maintaining heading, maintain altitude, checking all your gauges, making sure they're in the green, checking your fuel, like keeping the plane in the air. It's way more to it than I thought it was. And I have so much respect now for full-time professional pilots that are flying hundreds of people a day in their careers, and then even fighter pilots. Fighter pilots have these bombs strapped to them. They're flying into a certain, enemy village, enemy town, whatever, tank, whatever they're assigned to shoot, and they're having to navigate and work their heading and aim at a target, pull the trigger and shoot missiles and all this kind of stuff. So just learning to fly these last 6 months has definitely made me appreciate the aviation industry. But I tell you what, it's made me appreciate more is painting towers. For years, I had painted towers, and I'm like, oh, it's no big deal. It's good money, fun work. I enjoy doing it. And I never really thought about it from the airplane perspective. But now that I'm flying, and I'm flying all around these towers, and I've already flown around towers that I've worked on. We've flown around projects that I'm currently working on. And just flying by the tower, see now why the tower painting is so important. It really helps the visibility as you're flying 150, 200 miles an hour through the air. It really helps visibility and self-awareness of what's going on in front of you so you don't fly into these things. But yeah, flying's been fun. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of book work. There's just as much book work as there is actual physical work of getting the plane and flying. And then coming up at the end, you got your check ride. You got a DPE, an examiner that comes and gets in the plane with you. And he's going to fly around with you for 2 hours and ask you to do certain maneuvers and achieve certain tasks. And he's going to be talking with you the whole time, asking you questions and giving you, fake scenarios of what would you do if this happened? What would you do if that happened? And so that's the next thing for me is just getting ready to get past my check ride. We're actually going to fly out in the morning from Douglas, Georgia to Cedar Key, Florida, back over to Tallahassee, back up to Douglas, what they call a cross country, where you're just practicing hopping airports, talking on the radio and getting pretty fluid with everything so that you can get ready for your check ride. You no longer need your flight instructor.
Oh, nice. Boy, I remember I've got about 600 hours VFR, and I haven't flown in a couple of decades now, and I would love to do it again. But it's exciting to me that you are going through the training and you're going to be a pilot and you can fly to workplaces when that's appropriate and fly your family, to a little beach on a key in the Florida Keys if you need to for the weekend. Get away.
Right.
That's a nice feeling. That's a nice.
Yes,
oh
sir.
Yeah, you could go to the Bahamas. Hey, we got a couple more pictures to look at. Suncast, if you could pop that picture back up. That looks like a radar dome. Is that what that is?
It is. So that most of your TV stations, when they're showing you the weather on TV, that's a Doppler radar, and that Doppler radar sends out RF to the weather, and then it hits the weather and bounces back. And the distance that it takes to go out to the weather and bounce back is how far the storm is away. And then it gives you other readings of how dense the storm is, what's going on with it, what your winds are doing, how much rain it's going to be. And so we were hired at this particular job to take that down and put up a new one. And so that's what the crane's there for, is taking the radar Doppler down and grab the new one and stick the new one back up there.
Oh, channel
This is a
18
picture of a
somewhere.
600-foot
Mhm.
tower in Kentucky, and they had called us to change out or take down some old hard line that was no longer needed, just to reduce the structural loading of the tower, and also
Uh-huh.
paint it while we were there. So that's in central Kentucky, and we painted it, took down some hard line.
Well, I know that station. That's WLEX TV, channel 18. It has been the NBC affiliate. I assume it still is in Lexington.
Right. That's correct.
Wow. My goodness. Unfortunately, he's passed away, but the fellow who used to give the weather on in prime time was Frank Falconer on Channel 18. That's Frank was one of the people that inspired me to get my degree in meteorology. So, wow, that's
Bobby
great.
Dang.
What's next? What's next, Suncast? It's a small world, isn't it, Robbie? What's this one?
Yep. So that's the RCA antenna. That's on top of WLEX. It's an abandoned antenna. It's
Okay.
analog, no longer in
Uh-huh.
operation. And so actually the hard line that we was pulling down off of that tower was feeding that antenna, or used to feed that antenna. They're
Uh-huh.
at the time I was working with them, they were planning to leave the antenna up there, just part of history. But they asked us to take the feed line down off the tower that was feeding that antenna, just to reduce structural loading. And actually that's one of the most aggressive climbs that I've had in a long time. It's got step pegs, and it's about 80 foot tall, and there's nowhere to rest or, stand up or anything. It's just a straight climb to the top. And when you do get tired, you just hook off and lean down into your harness. But a few of those pegs were either cut off or just not there from the factory for whatever reason. And so you had quite a little height on certain pegs to kind of reach up and lunge to grab the next peg to get on up there. So that antenna definitely ain't for the short man that's trying to get up there and climb it.
Wow. Now, I've never been to that station, even though I've watched it a lot when I was in high school. Wow. I think about just one or two pictures, and then we'll let you go, Robbie. What's next, Suncast?
So that's another tower that I worked on. I ain't gonna say where because it's a really small area, but we painted it twice, 2010 and 2017. This would have been the second time in 17. It's a 750-foot cell supporter. And it's got a double stack bat wing and TV antenna on top of it. And they just called us to come paint the tower.
Oh, what a beautiful shot that is.
Yep. This is going to be Indiana in the fall, 1,000-foot tower.
Wow.
They called us to come paint the tower. And I had a drone guy come fly it and take some drone footage. And it was fall. The leaves were starting to turn. So he caught it just at the right time.
Let's get one more picture in here before we have to let Robbie go. That's interesting. I want to see Robbie tell us about what in the heck is this.
Yeah, that's the top of a brand new install. It was a 500-foot galvanized steel tower, and the gin pole picture that you showed earlier, the antenna that was coming up. This is the receiving end for that antenna. That's where the antenna was going to sit when it was on its way up. Actually, the antenna is right behind me, right there. We're fixing to swing it over and mount it. But you can't see it from that photo, but the antenna is actually right behind us on the gin pole, and it's fixing to swing around and sit right there.
Nice. So we're looking at a plate at the top of the tower there, aren't we?
Yeah, it's called a top cap. It's a cap that goes on top of the tower with the boat holes, and they got a light right there that's mounted that was for temporary until the antenna got there. So we had to unbolt that light and move it over out of the way, and then to swing the antenna around and set the antenna down and bolt it up, and then you just end up running your light on up higher up to the top of the antenna.
So will the antenna that's going to be mounted there, will it cover all those holes that surround the big hole?
That's correct. It's got a base plate on bottom of the antenna that is set down on top of all those holes, and then you start sticking bolts in it all the way around.
Cool. Very nice. All right, we're going to stop there. And Robbie, I know you're out of time, and so I'm going to thank you very much for taking the trouble and time to join us in your busy schedule. I know you've got family things to do right now, so I really appreciate you spending time with us and taking us through these pictures. It's been a great tour.
Yeah, man, it's been fun getting to know you on Facebook and talking with you privately, man. I like your business. I like what you're doing in the broadcast community and stuff, and so it's been a pleasure to meet you and talk with you all this time.
All right. Well, listen, safe driving and safe flying. Keep the greasy side down and the pointy end forward.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Robbie Hulett. He's the owner of Tower Maintenance Company. We'll have a link to his company in the show notes. And coming up next on This Week in Radio Tech, we're going to have an interview with a Nashville area station owner about the NAB and their petition to the FCC for a lot of deregulation and what they'd like to do. We've got Bud Walters with Cromwell Broadcasting coming up next, right after this on TWiRT. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by Broadcaster General Store and Innovonics. And you know how much I love Innovonics products. I owned this particular product. I own it on the island of Maui in Hawaii. It is the Innovonics Sophia HD radio site streamer. Now, we don't use this as a modulation monitor per se. We actually do have a separate Innovonics mod monitor that does HD. We have that separate. But for this HD radio site streamer, we use this to monitor the quality of our stations and our FM, and we can remotely tune it to whatever we want, and our HD stations on the station the FM that we do have HD channels. We can monitor all of those remotely, look at their pad data, look at the RDS data on the FM, and we just love this thing. This is a really awesome product, and it fits the bill so well. So much of our work these days as engineers is probably done remotely, and the site streamer, the Sophia site streamer from Innovonics lets you do that. By the way, we also have an AM version of this, the same thing, the Sophia AM site streamer. You can get one for FM and HD. You can get one for AM as well. And it gives you all the things that I just mentioned, your FM RDS and your HD pad data. It does have a front panel that is pretty easy to use. You highlight the thing that you want to change or look at and punch the button, and bam, you are looking at it. So it's a pretty self-explanatory front panel. But the web interface is what I really love. The web interface is just terrific, and you can get to it with your phone, with a tablet, with your computer. I've got mine set up on a secret way to get to it, and of course a strong password so I can get to it remotely and see what's going on. It does graphing of signal strength and RSSI and noise factor and all that. On the back, thanks Suncash for bringing that up. It's got AES67 streaming of the audio out the AOIP port. It also has an AES3 digital output and analog outputs left and right. And plus, it's got GPO outputs. You can set alarms to go off if bad things happen. So that's really cool. You also can give it 2 power supplies if you like. So you can really have this thing be super reliable, hooking it up to 2 different power strips and different power sources. It is the Sophia HD radio site streamer from Innovonics. I personally own this thing and love it, and you will love it too. And like I said, versions for AM and for FM as well without the HD. You can get it from Broadcasters General Store, BGS. Their website is bgs.cc. And you know why I love the folks at BGS? They have sharp pencils, low prices. They have an awesome inventory control computer ordering system that they literally have been building for years. And they can give you information, first of all, your lowest possible price, and they can give you the delivery date on this, whether it's available overnight or next week or in 2 weeks or whatever it may be. They are in touch with all their manufacturers as to delivery dates. Check them out at Broadcasters General Store, bgs.cc. Their phone number, 352-622-7700. Thanks to BGS and Innovonics for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech.
FCC Chairman Brendan Carr asked for ideas to cut outdated broadcast regulations, and the NAB has now given him a lot to work with. In an 80-page filing with a 60-page appendix, the NAB delivered a sweeping blueprint for deregulation under Carr's Delete, Delete, Delete initiative, targeting everything from local ownership caps to equal employment opportunity requirements. Now, the NAB filing urges the FCC to eliminate or to modernize a lot of outdated rules that disproportionately burden radio and TV broadcasters. Some of the key requests include removing ownership caps, reducing reporting requirements like public file and EEO audits, cutting back children's programming and accessibility mandates, simplifying AM radio technical standards, and easing emergency alert system or EAS rules. The NAB argues that these changes are necessary to ensure broadcasters remain competitive with the digital platforms that are nipping at our heels. So I'm standing here with Bud Walters. Bud, I'm going to move the camera just a little bit to get you better in frame. You're the topic of our discussion here. You are a station owner, a group owner. Tell us a little bit about your radio stations.
Well, we have 30 different formats with 22 full power stations, and then there are about 9 original formats on translators that are either fed by, fed with HD signals for the original formats. But all of our AMs, we have 6 AMs, and they all have 2 translators that rebroadcast their signal in their communities. So totally we have probably 21 or 22 translators among our group in central Illinois and around Owensboro, Kentucky, and then here in Nashville, where in Nashville we have 2 FMs and 1 AM, but then we also have 7 translators, and 3 of those translators are also original formats. So for our purposes, we say we have 6 radio stations or 6 formats in Nashville, Tennessee, and 3 of them are, of course, translator formats, or on the part not to forget is they are on full power HD stations.
Yeah.
So they have market wide coverage where people are driving cars that have HDs, because the FM radio automatically switches to the HD if it's strong enough, and that's so it's a much bigger signal than when you're thinking about a translator.
Now, a lot of people in FM broadcasting, other owners, and certainly people at the FCC and the different law firms know your name because of something that begins with the word Mattoon.
Yeah.
Give us the quick thing about what
first
Mattoon
part is. They know you're not from there because you said Mattoon.
Oh, okay.
And the people that live there call it Mattoon.
Mattoon. Okay.
It's Mattoon, Illinois, and we did file for a waiver to move a translator from Mattoon, and it eventually became known as the Mattoon waiver, and that helped an awful lot of AM radio stations, because we were making the move to help a daytime AM station that had no nighttime coverage of any kind. And by having that translator, we were able to make that a real radio station. For, as we all know, if we have an AM and it's a daytimer in a small town, it's pretty darn limiting. And once we got the translator with the AMs, they became real radio stations. And case in point for us is WVJS in Owensboro. Years ago, it used to be a big 5,000 watt 4-tower directional AM, and AM basically it just lost all its position in the market, was doing no business, and we were able to put a translator with it, and lo and behold, it wasn't the audience. I think the audience was listening, but there were no advertisers. The advertisers didn't think that people listened to AM, and once we added the FM translator, it was an aha moment for, oh sure. And so it is, it's really not about the AM as much as it is about the business side and the intellectual thought of the commercial, the business. And so each of our AMs does have 2 translators, and we can say they're on AM and FM.
Well, I know exactly what you mean, and even though I'm part owner of an AM. A News Talk AM in Greenville, Mississippi, and we have a translator for it. Happens to be on the same tower as the AM, and the AM has minuscule power at night. So, people believe it's a real radio station because it's got the
FM frequency.
Yeah.
So
well, let's get on our topic here about these proposals from the NAB to the FCC, and you're going to comment on a few of these. What about ownership caps? That's one of the first things that the NAB is wanting to eliminate ownership caps. What's your opinion there?
Well, I was on the original committee when all of this was taken into consideration. And uh, at the time, we never ever considered what about national caps. We all thought about local.
Mm.
And the commission, established its policies based on, the size of your market and the Nielsen.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, that became very limiting, and particularly in smaller towns. And we found ourselves in a very small town where there was a Nielsen book. It wasn't but once a year, but there was still once a book.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, that caused everybody that had, if there were 10 stations in the market and 3 owners, that meant that nobody could have more than 3 stations in that size market.
Yeah.
And it really there was really not enough business to support 3 owners. And as recently happened, one of them basically has gone out of business, and the other 2 were competitive. But even in today's market, it's not, it would be better if there was 1 owner, or at maximum 2. And if you go way back 2 years ago when we had 777, most markets could handle 2 owners. They couldn't handle 3.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, now that the business is the way it is, I think each small town could be better served by 1 owner. And we all know that, not every owner is perfect, but, they all had 1 newspaper for a long time. Years ago, they had 4 newspapers. 4 newspapers meant 4 different opinions. It's kind of like we've got today, got lots of opinions, and it was the point of view of the owner. So that's not a bad. My take on it is, since the media has changed and there's so much now digital, the only way for smaller markets to compete is to basically have 1 or 2 owners that have the signals.
On these days, there's no shortage of places to go for opinions.
Right.
The internet brings us a lot of choices, and even cable TV or even non-cable over-the-air TV. I mean, here in Nashville, we got almost 50 channels of over-the-air TV. So there's no...
And we got 50 plus radio stations.
Yeah. And if you speak Spanish, there's plenty of those too.
Yeah.
So, what about deregulating and modernizing operations like the online public inspection file? I thought it was quite an advance forward in technology when they let us put our public file online. But now we're talking about maybe eliminating that altogether. The only people that I've ever known to take a look at it are ex-wives and competitors.
Well, politicians.
Politicians, okay.
Politicians. Probably, I think the process is you have to do a quarterly report for your public file.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a licensing issue. The FCC will not transfer a license if the public file has not been kept up to date. And people buying a station, if that quarterly reports are not in there, they have to do a real good think about it, and they have to be able to bring the file up to date and explain it and all that kind of stuff. And the licensee, if they have not filed quarterly reports, it's a licensing matter and finable. Then beyond that, now we are with politicians, we have to, file immediately the same day that anything is done, what they're doing, and that is basically so their competitors can see it.
Oh.
Most of the public doesn't care, but it is there for that purpose. So, I think really what you're asking is, what is the purpose of the public file?
Mm-hmm.
And if the public file is for the public to come see it, I would say the general public doesn't care. One individual may. And to your point, I cannot remember anybody coming to see our public file when it was local, besides an FCC inspector. And the one time I was selling a radio station in Terre Haute, Indiana, and my competitor came to see the public file.
Yeah.
So that's my experience. I don't know. I guess I don't know what the real purpose is, other than I understand there has to be some control and there is a reason to file something, but it doesn't need to be onerous, and it doesn't need to be a club over your head.
What about biennial ownership reporting? Is that something that could be eliminated without?
For us, it has not caused a problem.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, I think the purpose, and of course, there's a reason for me to say that.
Mm-hmm.
Since I'm the licensee, there's not a whole long list of names that go with our filing. For other companies, where you're in a small town and you got a number of local citizens, it can become onerous because, some of them don't want information known about them. But then the FCC is wanting to also verify that they are qualified to be involved as a licensee. So I think this is certainly a gray area. Again, we need a better definition of what its purpose is, and then adjust to the purpose.
Any problem with random EEO audits? Is that a effective thing or a waste of time?
We have filed a lot of those. That is an expense item. Because most of us who are filing EEO reports have nothing to be worried about. But as you know, none of us want to ever be trapped into giving incorrect information to the FCC. And so therefore, anytime you do anything of that kind of nature, that is basically giving a report to the FCC that you're putting your name behind 100%, you need to have it. You need to have it checked, have a counsel look at it, and confirm it. So it is expensive. And that's the nature of the question. It's not about, again, the objective. I think everybody definitely wants to try to be compliant with every kind of equal opportunity that exists. But the nature of the report and having to do it is onerous because of the costs that are inevitably involved.
There's some technical rules that the NAB is asking to update, like the FM duplication rule. And I understand that did that come back to some degree, the FM duplication rule, where you've got
I don't know exactly but the idea was that you theoretically couldn't simulcast an AM and FM. Now you pretty much can, but FM you can't. That's the way I understand it. Except in the case of translators.
Yeah. Well, you have to transmit the same thing.
Yeah. So you are, and with translators, you can't have two translators from the same tower broadcasting the same thing. They have to serve somewhat separate areas. So I think it would be helpful to be able to have some duplication. It has not been something that I've spent a lot of time worrying about, but I can see. We have one situation where we have an AM and an FM simulcasting, but they are basically 27 miles apart.
We have in Mississippi and Arkansas, we have two FM stations that transmit mostly the same thing. They cover two different market areas. The question that I don't know the answers to is how much do they overlap, and how important is that? But we feel we're serving our public best by having the same format in two different areas that may overlap.
And of course, this comes about in part because it used to be when they had a main studio rule. Then you wouldn't be in a situation of being able to do that. Now you are more able to do that.
I don't know how much you've concerned yourself with software-based EAS solutions. This is something that I, with my employer, Telos Alliance, have been talking about for, a good 5 years now, that the rules for EAS now pretty well mandate a piece of equipment that your signal must go through, and there's probably better ways to do it that are going to be just as reliable. Do you have any thoughts about it?
Yeah, and I'm just old school on this.
Yeah.
EAS is meant to serve the public in time of emergency.
Yeah.
And if the internet goes down in time of emergency, where's the EAS system? And so I feel like the EAS system we feed our transmitters by STL. We feed our the EAS information over the STLs. They are not likely to go down in the same way that the internet is likely to go.
I see.
And I know there's some ways to do some of this by wireless and stuff like that. Wireless is fine, but if we are living in a wired world that is destroyable fairly easily, I question, depending on the internet for EAS.
Gotcha. Understood. What about requirements requiring multilingual alerts? This is interesting. Here in Nashville, we have a lot of Spanish speakers, and we have quite a number of Spanish language AM and a few FM radio stations. What about proposal it seems like you'd want to require, or you'd want to transmit alerts in the language of your listeners, and I don't know what's going.
That makes sense to me. And if since you're using Nashville as an example, I understand that we have like 30 different languages, 30 different plus languages in Nashville. And, we have the largest Kurdish population in America. So are we going to be able to provide an EAS message in Kurdish? Are we going to be able to, with all the Spanish languages, how many different versions of Spanish, whether it's, Panamanian Spanish or Puerto Rican Spanish?
Well, there is that, yeah.
You have all the different things there. So I don't have an answer for this one.
Yeah.
It's kind of like somebody in Washington will make a decision, but without knowing the lay of the land. And in Mattoon, Illinois, our Hispanic population is very, very small, less than 1%.
Yeah.
I'm sure that however that rule gets considered, it is a broad brush, or they're going to say if your population is above X. I don't know, but right now, I think the fundamental thing is the majority of the population does speak English. We've got to initially serve that audience, then figure out about the other.
We're talking to Bud Walters about some of the proposals from the NAB to the FCC about changes or reductions in regulatory overbearance. And we'll be right back with a final thought or two right after this. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by Angry Audio and the Rave Console. Oh my goodness, this thing is going into podcast studios and radio stations and small production facilities and voiceover booths all over the country. The Rave Console is so well built. It feels like a little tank. I mean, it's not a big console, but it's heavy, and it's heavy duty because Mike Dosh, the owner of Angry Audio, knows how to design an audio console. He's been doing that for probably close to 30 years now. It probably is 30 years, maybe more. Angry Audio makes this Rave console, and it is so beautiful. It uses the Studio Hub connectors for all of the line level inputs and outputs. Now, it's an analog console. It's not a digital console. It's not an audio over IP console. It is a simple, effective, super clean, super reliable analog audio console. It does have 4 mic preamps, so 4 mic inputs, but those same faders can be used for line level inputs if you want to switch them to line level inputs as well. It's got, of course, a tally light output. It's got 2 mix minus outputs, so you can have that for a codec and a phone hybrid. It's got a studio speaker output, a control room speaker output. It's got a headphone output on it. All the things that you need to feed a talk studio and a studio with a separate studio. So it is a really versatile console, but it also works in just a very small voiceover situation. From Angry Audio, the Rave console. Check it out from your favorite dealer, or go to the Angry Audio website. Check it out there, angryaudio.com. Thanks for sponsoring the show. Hey, our show also brought to you by Max Connect. Today I want to re-mention to you Max Connect Wireless. They're always improving. Max Connect Wireless was brought out a few years ago. Josh Bone worked out technical deals with several of the major different cell carriers to get
4G LTE channels that were prioritized. The data is prioritized. You're not sharing data with 60,000 people in a stadium, or maybe a few hundred people, at a ball game or a car lot or a remote broadcast, or even way out in the country at a transmitter site. You get these channels, these prioritized data channels for your own. And that means you get a fixed IP address. That's pretty cool. That way, if you have a remote device checking in, you can whitelist that remote device checking into your network if you need to. And that really improves security. So whether you're using Max Connect Wireless to provide you with internet connectivity at a transmitter site or at a remote broadcast, and boy, they've been used for both a lot. Max Connect Wireless makes this convenient and secure and truly, truly reliable. We have used Max Connect to do audio and video broadcasts out of locations where, hey, we thought we had a good 5G signal and just kept dropping and dropping and dropping. And yet the Max Connect 4G LTE wireless just kept on going and gave us every packet through as far as we could tell, no dropouts. And they've got, I said they were improving it constantly. Now you can marry your Max Connect LTE router along with a low Earth orbit satellite modem. And that gives you the possibility to have really reliable data at sites where you've got to have both. Maybe you use the satellite data until you reach a data cap with the satellite, and then you switch over to the Max Connect. Or maybe the local 4G LTE tower goes down, you switch over automatically to the satellite data. Either way, you get really reliable data, fixed IP addresses using Max Connect Wireless. You can check them online at maxconnect.com and pick your service, AT&T, T-Mobile, or Verizon. They also have options in Canada as well. Max Connect, thanks a lot for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech.
Kirk Harnack on This Week in Radio Tech. We're talking to Bud Walters. He is a multi-market station owner. You have about 30 different programs that program sources.
5 different markets, Nashville and Central Illinois. There are 3 markets, and in Owensboro, Kentucky, and tend to be smaller communities.
Yeah.
And unrated, sometimes under the umbrella of a rated community, but in and of themselves not rated by Nielsen.
Yeah, here we are in market number, what are we, 40 here in Nashville, Tennessee. So good job. You're also a pilot, aren't you?
Correct.
Yeah, that's awfully cool.
Yeah, which makes it easy to go to smaller towns, and I'm really lucky to be, I've been flying 50 years.
Back in the day when we had more onerous restrictions on ownership, and you had to, if you were a multi-market owner, you had to travel a lot from market to market to market.
Right.
It seems like that's when I met a number of station owners who were also pilots.
Right.
Yeah.
Such a privilege.
Yeah. Good for you. I want to ask you, I got one more question. You've got a couple things to bring up. This AI technology, these artificial intelligence voices, my stations use them in some limited capacities here and there, typically in roles that don't matter that much, a little station identification and imaging. And we have an oldie station that has an overnight shift that is done with AI voice. We're reasonably happy with the way it sounds, but there's some thought about using AI voices or maybe likenesses in political advertising. But that sounds like it could be a pretty dangerous proposition to imitate somebody else or fool the public. What do you think?
Well, definitely. It's kind of like copyright violation. That's the way you would think about it. If somebody has their voice, like Paul Harvey, if people tried to do Paul Harvey, whatever the law is, I don't know. Whatever the moral obligation would be, I think morally it would be incorrect to try to usurp Paul Harvey's voice. And there are a number of other artists that that's true. So the context is it really has to do with copyright, and or I don't think that I just don't think you should really be misleading the public when you use AI. Now we use AI. Mm-hmm. And we do run a message that says we use AI, but we don't use it to try to impersonate somebody else.
Right.
We try to use AI to help us be more creative, to do a better job. One way we are using AI to impersonate an advertiser is many of our advertisers when they read their own commercials, don't do as solid a job as they could.
Mhm.
And so we get their voice, and then we have our staff member read it, and then we lay the client's voice on it with their permission. And we had one guy come in and he tried 5, 6, 8 times to do it. It was really awful. So we had our guy do it and then put his voice on it, played it back for him. He said, "Hey, I did a pretty good job, didn't I?" and he did. It sounded great. So, and that's all we wanted for him was for that commercial to be good. But that's not the same thing as imitating Paul Harvey.
Right, right. So you use it to make people and presentation better.
Correct.
Okay. All right. You've got a couple of points to bring up about this NAV filing with the FCC.
This is an economic matter for virtually every licensee. And what we suggested is that whatever they're going to charge us to allow some kind of a payment plan that is not onerous. Because in September, they decide about the 2nd or 3rd of September that your FCC annual fee is X dollars, and it's always in the thousands. I don't care what size your market is. And then they say you have to pay it in full in 20 days or you will be fined 25%. That's onerous. Not arguing with them about the amount of the fee, though I think that, I know when I started in business, there was no such fee, so it's officially a tax of some kind. But if you're going to charge it, give us the means to be able to pay it and not be onerous to our business. And I hope that makes.
So you're saying you don't know what the bill is going to be. You get it, and then you got 20 days to pay it, and it's always in the thousands. You already know it's going to be in the thousands.
Yeah.
But you don't know exactly how much it's going to be. Wow.
Yeah. And it's significant for our company.
Yeah.
And we're willing to pay it, but I'd much rather pay it over 10 months than 20 days.
Goodness. Okay. All right. So you see that,
and that has, we talked about this non-duplication rule. We talked about the inspection file. We talked about EEO. We talked about multiple ownership. There are some questions about, and this is some other filings where folks are asking, does the FM allocations table make any sense? Or if somebody shuts down an FM station, that frequency and everything should just go away. It's still, in some cases, if somebody turns in their license, that frequency is scheduled to come up for auction sometime in the future. Who knows when?
Okay.
But it's there. It's all, it would just be better to say, hey, go away. If somebody didn't want it and they didn't sell it, it's not going to be very viable to start with.
Right.
And so why, play this game over when it's very likely to have the same outcome again.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that question about whether spacing requirements have a place in this day and age, we don't know. Same thing about, this gets pretty specific about spacing and reference points and, protected contours. There are people have lots of thoughts about how that should be either maintained or done away with. Delete channel 6 protections. Some people feel strongly about that. Lots of nitty gritty engineering type things that were relevant when we only had 4,000 radio stations in America, and have, got a little less relevant in 1988 or 89 with 80/90, and then got less and less relevant when we had ownership changes. And, now, while you can still find an allocation for a brand new station, generally it's not in a place where it would be viable.
Right.
And viable from an advertising standpoint. Not to say you can't put a station on the air, but you can probably find a place to put it on the air. But is there anybody that wants to advertise on it? We are in a different world, and it's more difficult to run these operations, knowing that our total income is from just from advertisers.
Right.
There are other things we can do and to be the media company in our community and be helpful, but you can't think of us anymore just as a radio station that survives on advertising alone.
It's tough to own a station, even if it's available in, say, West Undershirt, North Dakota.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just no people around.
And that was true 30 years ago. I can remember being in a meeting with a guy and he said, I know I can own you've told me where I can own a station, but to be truthful, I don't want to live there.
Yeah.
And so it's a lifestyle thing. You've got to find somebody that wants to own the station in the small town, and then they got to want to be there. It's except in the larger places, it's not an absentee business.
Gotcha.
So
anything else on your plate?
I think translators just need to be talked about.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be some ways that translators can still be moved for those AM stations that were not able to get them in previous activities.
Yeah.
And now are prohibited from doing it. And even if they could buy one, they may not be able to move it to where they really need it to be to help their AM. And so we need to find a way to address that.
Certainly you have found a lot of value in translators and their movement and allocation, basically putting a frequency and power level to its best use to best serve the public. Now, it also may best serve the owners, and of course you're interested in best serving yourself, but in doing so, you also best serve the public who you want to get the programming to.
Well, the way I look at multiple signals is this, that the public has lots of choices about music today.
Mm-hmm.
And if a broadcaster only has one music choice, that's a limiting factor right away. And if we're wanting to serve our communities, having multiple frequencies with different music formats gives choice to the public. But in terms of the localism, that happens between the songs.
Yeah.
And the localism can be very similar on all those different signals so that the entire local public is served. They have a choice of the music and all the other choices, but usually we are going to be the only local choice with local information.
So I've got a kind of a final follow-up question here. Thinking about all the different technologies or techniques that are available to you today as a station owner, multiple stations, several markets, thinking about things like DTS Auto Stage or RDS or FMHDs or translators, I know you're excited about those, or some AI voicing to help out within, as you mentioned in your cases. What technology or broadcast technique that involves technology these days is kind of hot on your radar?
Well, all of them. We signed up for Xperia a year ago, maybe longer, and and of course that works through your RDS system and puts your logo and stuff on the screen in the car. We have Q, which gives our advertisers ad sync and allows when their audio advertisement runs, their logo appears on the screen or their message, and that makes their advertising work better. We do use AI. We have a particular program for that, and we are using that particular program to not only lay voiceover for an advertiser like I described, but it's reaching out and getting the weather for us and bringing it in and inserting it, and we're getting it from a credible source, and it works well with our station. And we are using it to do spec commercials for going to call on a client. It will, whatever everybody has in our particular situation, it'll go to their website, take the information, write a commercial, produce it, and we can go play it for them, and then they will tell us what they like or don't like, but it opens up the conversation. So the technology aspects of all of this are very important. And HD, I think HD is important because it gives us, we know there are people out there now doing formats, on the web or on the internet and streaming it. if you have it on HD, you can also stream it. It's a real radio station, but it's also can be streamed. And we need to use the technology that is out there to make ourselves better and help the folks that work with us spend less time at doing what they used to do, because nobody that's watching this remembers splicing tape, but I do.
Yeah, sure, I do.
And I can tell you, it took a long time to put together a commercial and splice two pieces of tape, and now you push a button, and that's time management. It's personnel management, but really, it's not. This new technology is not to get rid of people. The new technology is there to help them be better. And, if somebody ever says, well, it's going to take my job, the only thing I could ever say to that is say, it's never going to take your job, but the guy that learns it better than you do is going to take your job.
Yeah, I hear you.
And that's true in any industry. It's not just ours, it's every industry, and we're all faced with that.
Whether you're writing legal briefs or writing spec spots.
That's right.
Yeah, use the tools that are available.
That's right. But it still has to be correct.
Yes.
And it still takes informed eyes to know, hey, that isn't right. Because, already they've had different lawyers use AI and found that there were invented cases in AI proposals, and they get egg on their folks pretty quickly, if not disbarred.
Our industry friend Dan McQuillan at Broadcast Bionics said to me at this last NAB show, he said, AI is wonderful, but it can tell you something extremely confidently that's also wrong.
Yes.
And
that's what we're faced with. But I do think I don't want to say we have all the technologies, but we have a lot of the newer technologies, and it is always a learning curve.
Cool.
It's a learning curve.
Bud, thanks very much. I'm Kirk Harnack. We're in the Nashville office of Cromwell Broadcasting with Bud Walters. Bud, I appreciate your time. Thank you so kindly.
Thank you.
We sure appreciate Robbie Hulett joining us for This Week in Radio Tech. He's the owner of TWiRT Maintenance Company. And thanks a lot to Bud Walters. He is the owner of Cromwell Broadcasting. They have stations in about 5 different markets, small to medium markets. Well, I guess Nashville is their largest market, and it's almost a big market. Top 40 anyway. And we appreciate Bud's comments on the regulatory changes that may be coming along from the FCC in this time of encouraged deregulation. Thanks a lot for joining us. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.